Ever had someone try to push your buttons and you wished you had the perfect comeback? Not something loud or aggressive, but something so calm, so sharp, it shuts them down instantly without you breaking a sweat? What if I told you that the most powerful responses don't involve yelling, arguing, or defending yourself at all? Instead, they're quiet, clever, and completely disarm the person trying to bring you down while keeping your dignity fully intact. In this video, I'll give you 7 ruthless but classy comebacks to deal with disrespect, whether it's from a rude coworker, a toxic friend, or a total stranger. Say them once, and you'll never feel powerless in the face of disrespect again. Some people seem to thrive on disrespect. It's almost like a sport to them, pushing your buttons, testing your patience, waiting eagerly for that one moment when you finally snap. That's the game they play. They want to provoke you. They want to watch you lose control. Because the moment you explode in anger, they win. But here's the truth: staying calm, that's your superpower. That's the real flex. Because when you don't take the bait, when you respond with clarity instead of chaos, it flips the whole script. The real power isn't in shouting louder, it's in speaking softer but sharper, with such unexpected precision that it stuns them into silence. No yelling, no emotional outbursts, just pure, deliberate words like a blade wrapped in velvet that make them instantly regret ever crossing the line with you. In this video, I'm going to share with you some of the most powerful verbal responses you can use to completely shut down rudeness instantly and effectively. These aren't about being petty or mean. They're about reclaiming your dignity without stooping to their level. Say these, and you'll never walk away from a disrespectful encounter feeling powerless again. By the way, if you're someone who enjoys deep, thought-provoking reflections on stoicism, self-mastery, and navigating life with wisdom and strength, you're going to love my free Sunday newsletter. Every week, I send out powerful lessons, uncomfortable truths, and practical strategies to help you grow mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, all for free. Want in? Just hit the link below and start receiving content that actually adds value to your week. And if you're a brand or creator who believes in making a real impact, my inbox is open. Let's collaborate and build something meaningful together. Now let's get into the first powerful line you can use to neutralize disrespect. You're entitled to your opinion, and I'm entitled to ignore it. This is one of the most underrated but highly effective power moves you can use when faced with arrogance, criticism, or unsolicited judgment. Why? Because it's not aggressive, it's not emotional, it doesn't scream for attention. It's calm, controlled, and cuts deep, a subtle reminder that their words hold absolutely no weight in your life. And nothing frustrates an ego-driven person more than being completely dismissed with elegance. You see, people who talk down to you rarely do it out of concern or genuine intent to help. It's not even because they believe they're right. More often, it's because they want control. They want to feel superior. In their mind, their opinion is law and you're just someone who should quietly obey. But when you don't argue back, when you don't explain or defend yourself, when you simply shrug and walk away, it strips them of that illusion of control. It leaves them powerless. I had to learn this lesson the hard way. I used to think I had to prove myself, that if someone criticized my ideas or laughed at my goals, I had to explain, justify, even defend, like somehow their approval validated my path. I remember it clearly. I was just starting a big project that meant the world to me. I had been pouring my heart into it late nights, early mornings, pushing through setbacks, sacrificing time and comfort. One day, I casually told an old friend about it. He just smirked and said, "That's a waste of time. You really think anyone's going to care about that?" The old me? I would have snapped. I would have listed out every reason why the project had potential, why it mattered, why I believed in it. I would have pleaded with him to understand. But this time, I stayed quiet, and I thought to myself, why am I trying to prove anything to someone who's never even tried to build something of their own? That moment changed everything for me. That moment taught me something profound. You don't have to explain yourself to people who don't deserve an explanation. And when I calmly smiled and said, "You're entitled to your opinion, and I'm entitled to ignore it," I could almost see the confusion flicker in his eyes. Then, without missing a beat, I changed the subject casually, like his words never even landed. And here's the beautiful part. He had absolutely nothing left to say. He was expecting a reaction, defensiveness, justification, maybe even an argument, but when I gave him nothing, it threw him off completely. In that silence, I had taken all the power away. No drama, no debate, just a calm dismissal. And trust me, deep down, he felt it, he knew. So why does this response work so well? Because it denies them the one thing they crave most, your emotional reaction. That flare of defensiveness, that urge to explain or prove them wrong, that's what fuels their sense of superiority. But when you show that their words carry no weight in your world, when you respond without even flinching, it stings. Not because you attacked them, but because you didn't. It sends a clear message. They're allowed to talk. Sure, but you're under no obligation to care. You're not looking for their approval. You're not building your life based on their validation. And when someone realizes that their opinion doesn't move you, especially when they're trying to bring you down, it drives them crazy. That's why this line is so effective. It shuts them down without raising your voice or lowering your standards. So when should you use this response? Use it when someone mocks your career choice or life goals. Maybe you're pursuing something bold, something outside the norm, and they say, "That'll never work." Just look at them, smile, and say it. You're entitled to your opinion, and I'm entitled to ignore it, then move on. Use it when a toxic family member tries to judge your decisions. Whether it's a parent, a sibling, or that overbearing uncle who always has something negative to say, remind them, you're entitled to your opinion, and I'm entitled to ignore it. Use it when a coworker tries to belittle your ideas in a meeting. You know the type, always trying to seem smarter, always shooting down others to feel tall. Just turn to them calmly and say, "You're entitled to your opinion, and I'm entitled to ignore it," then shift your attention elsewhere. Nothing more needs to be said. Here's the hard truth most people overlook. The majority of those who criticize you aren't doing better than you, they're just louder. And often, the louder they are, the more insecure they feel inside. They want to control the narrative, because deep down, they're terrified that you might actually succeed and prove them wrong. And that's exactly why this comeback is so powerful. It doesn't just shut down the disrespect, it reminds you that their opinions aren't facts. That what they say doesn't define you. That your path doesn't need their permission. There's a saying I keep close. A lion doesn't lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. That's the mindset you need to carry with you. So next time someone throws shade on your life choices, Don't flinch. Don't argue. Don't shrink. Just smile and say, "You're entitled to your opinion, and I'm entitled to ignore it." Then walk away with your head high and your peace intact. Because at the end of the day, your life is yours and their opinion? It's just background noise. After mastering the power of calmly dismissing someone's opinion, let's take things a step further with a response that blends wit and truth into a line they won't see coming but won't forget either. Here it is. If I had $1 for every smart thing you said, I'd be broke. Now, at first glance, this might sound like a playful jab, but beneath that humor lies something brutally sharp. This line exposes someone's lack of depth without ever needing to say the word dumb. You don't need to insult them directly, the meaning speaks for itself. And that's what makes it sting even more. People who are rude often love to dominate conversations. They talk a lot, but when you really listen, their words carry very little value. It's all noise and no meaning. This comeback highlights that exact truth. It makes them realize in front of everyone that despite all their talking, they haven't said anything worthwhile. And the best part? They can't win. If they get angry, they look defensive. If they try to argue, they're just digging their own grave, proving the point you've already made. It's a verbal checkmate. Let me tell you how I used this line once and it shut someone down instantly. There was this guy the first used to go to school with, let's call him Ryan. Ryan had one go-to strategy in life: make fun of people. He wasn't particularly clever, definitely not successful, and lacked any real insight. But he knew how to talk loud, wear confidence like a mask, and throw sarcastic insults just sharp enough to make others uncomfortable. That was his entire identity: make others feel small, so he could feel big. One day, we were standing in a group having a casual conversation. I was explaining something, nothing complicated, just making a simple point. Right then, Ryan jumped in with that smug tone of his. "Oh yeah, because you're such a genius, right?" You know that tone, the kind that drips with sarcasm, the kind that dares you to defend yourself and look flustered. A few people laughed, not because it was funny but because he said it loud and confidently. And in those moments, confidence can be mistaken for cleverness. Now, when you're put on the spot like that, you've got two options: let them steal the moment, or take it back with power. So I looked at him, smiled, and calmly replied, "Ryan, if I had $1 for every smart thing you said, I'd be broke." Silence. One guy literally choked on his drink. Another muttered under his breath, "Oh, damn." And Ryan? He froze. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, fumbled for words, but there was nothing, not a sound, not a comeback, nothing. That's when I truly understood. Being loud doesn't mean being intelligent. And when you call out that emptiness with precision and calm, they crumble. So why does this line hit so hard? Because it throws their own game back at them. Rude people thrive on making others feel small, but this flips the dynamic. It exposes the hollowness behind their sarcasm. And you don't even have to raise your voice. You stay composed while making them question everything they just said. If they lash out, they prove your point. If they stay quiet, they admit defeat. Either way, you've won the moment with class. Now, when should you use this response? Use it when someone repeatedly interrupts you just to throw in sarcastic jabs, not to contribute, but to feel superior. Use it when a coworker acts like they're the smartest in the room, but never offer any actual solutions or ideas. And definitely use it when a so-called friend constantly mocks you while never saying anything meaningful themselves. Sometimes, people build their identity around tearing others down, and this line is the exact mirror they need to face. Because here's the brutal truth. The ones who mock the most often have the least to offer. So, when someone hides behind sarcasm and tries to look clever just to mask their own insecurity, you now know how to bring clarity to that chaos with a single, pointed sentence. And when that fails, and the person keeps coming back with even more arrogance, that's when you need a different kind of response, one rooted in composure, not cleverness. Here it is. I don't argue with people who thrive on disrespect. This isn't just a snappy comeback. It's a declaration of powerful stance that communicates one very clear message. I see through your act, and I'm not giving it my energy. Because let's be honest, some people aren't here to have a conversation. They don't want dialogue. They're not interested in exchanging ideas or finding solutions. Their mission? Stir the pot, demean others, boost their ego by bringing someone else down. That's all. These are the people who don't actually listen. They simply wait for their turn to speak, and when they do, it's only to launch a subtle insult or passive-aggressive jab. You could casually say, "I like tea more than coffee," and somehow, they'll twist it into a personal attack. They act like being rude is a badge of honor, constantly throwing around phrases like, "I'm just being brutally honest," when in truth, there's no honesty, just brutality. So ask yourself, why give your time and energy to someone who doesn't even respect you? Let me share a personal example of how I used this line and how it ended the nonsense once and for all. A while back, I worked with a guy, let's call him Jake. Jake didn't just have an attitude. He fed on disrespect. It wasn't enough for him to disagree with someone's idea, he had to dismiss it in a way that made them feel small. Every meeting was his stage. He'd talk over people, reject suggestions without offering any real input, and throw in passive-aggressive digs whenever the opportunity arose. One day, during a team discussion, I offered a solution to help streamline one of our processes. Nothing groundbreaking, just a thoughtful contribution. But before I could even finish, Jake rolled his eyes and said with that trademark smirk, "Yeah, because you're such an expert, right?" It was the kind of comment designed to make you defensive, to corner you into justifying your thoughts. A few years ago, I probably would have taken the bait. I might have started explaining myself, maybe even gotten visibly irritated. But not this time. I leaned back, stayed calm, and with full composure, I said, "I don't argue with people who thrive on disrespect." Then I said nothing else. Silence. The whole room went quiet. You could feel the tension, everyone waiting to see what Jake would say next. But he had nothing, not a word, because deep down, he knew if he kept talking, he'd just prove me right. If he tried to backtrack, he'd lose face. He sat there, visibly uncomfortable, fumbling for a response that never came. And you know what? After that moment, he never tried that trick on me again. So why does this line carry so much weight? Because it shines a light on their behavior without ever sinking to their level. You're not name-calling. You're not insulting. You're simply describing with surgical precision the truth of who they are. And once it's out in the open, there's nowhere for them to hide. By calmly refusing to engage, you didn't just take the high road, you took back control. And that silence? That calm dismissal? It speaks louder than any argument ever could. Because here's the thing. People who thrive on disrespect feed off reactions. They want you to explode, to argue, to defend yourself. That's how they gain their sense of power. But when you give them nothing, no reaction, no rise, they lose that control. Suddenly, they're not the ones calling the shots. You've flipped the script without even raising your voice. And whether they show it or not, it makes them pause. It forces them to sit with their own behavior. You've held up a mirror and some reflections are hard to look at. So, when should you use this response? Use it when someone constantly tries to provoke a fight. Instead of giving in to their negativity, starve it. Let their words hang in the air and fall flat. Use it when a coworker or boss talks down to you. This line calmly asserts your boundaries. It tells them you will not tolerate being disrespected, no matter their title. Use it when a friend or family member belittles you. Just because someone is close doesn't give them the right to treat you poorly. This response reminds them and yourself that respect is non-negotiable. And when a stranger tries to push your buttons, remember, not every battle is worth picking up. Some fights aren't worth your energy. Some people, not even worth your acknowledgement. Here's a harsh truth that most don't want to admit. Some people don't argue to find solutions. They argue because they want to win. They argue because they enjoy watching others unravel. It gives them a twisted sense of superiority. So what's the best move? No move, no response. Just say, I don't argue with people who thrive on disrespect. And then walk away, calm, unbothered. Because once they realize they no longer have control over your emotions, your time, or your attention, they've already lost. And now let's turn to another powerful line. It's more than just a comeback, it's a wake-up call that stops them in their tracks. Your attitude isn't going to get you very far in life. This hits differently. Why? Because people who walk around being rude, sarcastic, and dismissive often think they're winning. They think that putting others down makes them seem stronger or smarter. But the truth? That kind of attitude is a straight shot to nowhere. Let's break it down. Rude people often confuse arrogance with confidence. They think that being condescending earns them respect. But reality doesn't work like that. No one respects a person who treats others poorly. No boss promotes someone who undermines their team. No meaningful relationship thrives when one person always belittles the other. And no truly successful person ever reached greatness by talking down to others instead of lifting them up. So, when you look someone like that in the eye and say, your attitude isn't going to get you very far in life, you're not just pushing back. You're showing them a glimpse of their own future, a future shaped by burned bridges, broken trust, and missed opportunities. That's what makes this line cut deeper than most. Let me give you a real example. A few years ago, I worked with someone, let's call him Mark. Now, Mark didn't just have bad days. Rudeness was his brand. It was almost like he believed that being cold and dismissive made him a leader. If someone made a mistake, he'd roll his eyes instead of offering support. If someone had an idea, he'd shut it down before they even finished speaking. His entire presence was designed to make others feel smaller. And then one day, in the middle of a team meeting, he snapped at a colleague and said, "Maybe if you actually knew what you were talking about, we wouldn't be wasting time." The room shifted. You could feel it. People looked down, awkwardly shuffled papers, avoided eye contact. The tension was thick. But no one spoke up, and that's exactly what rude people count on. They thrive in environments where others stay silent, where no one dares to challenge them. That's their shield. But I wasn't about to let that slide. I calmly looked at him and said, "Your attitude isn't going to get you very far in life." The silence that followed was different this time. Mark smirked at first, like he always did, trying to play it cool, trying to laugh it off. But as the meeting went on, something changed. He wasn't joking anymore. He wasn't interrupting. For the first time, he looked uncomfortable, quiet, almost reflective. Why? Because somewhere deep down, he knew I was right. And here's the most satisfying part. A few months later, the company announced internal promotions. Names were called, roles were elevated, but guess who was passed over? Mark. Because here's the thing, no matter how technically skilled you are, if people can't stand working with you, you're going nowhere. Arrogance burns bridges that talent alone can't rebuild. So, why does this line work so well? Because it forces the other person to zoom out. Right now, in the moment, they might think they're winning by dominating the conversation or belittling others. But where is that behavior actually taking them in life? Nowhere. It exposes the long-term consequences of their short-term power play. This isn't just a clever insult, it's a reality check. And that's what makes it sting. Because facts? They hurt more than any insult ever could. When should you use this line? When a coworker constantly talks down to others or dismisses people's input, remind them that their behavior isn't just toxic. It's career limiting. When a stranger is being publicly rude at a cafe, in a queue, or online sometimes, they need to be reminded they're not untouchable. When a family member keeps tearing people down, remember, being family doesn't give someone immunity from basic respect. And when a friend has a consistently toxic attitude, always mocking, always negative, maybe it's time they hear what no one else is willing to say. Here's the final thought. Some people walk around with a chip on their shoulder, thinking their rudeness makes them bold, untouchable. But life has a quiet way of humbling those who believe they're above everyone else. And sometimes, all it takes is one sentence to plant that seed of truth. So next time someone tries to belittle you, don't shout, don't justify, just say, "Your attitude isn't going to get you very far in life." Then sit back and let the silence do the rest. After revealing that someone's toxic attitude won't get them far, the next move is to end the game before it even begins with a line so calm and definitive. It leaves no room for argument. This conversation was over before it even started. It might seem simple, but don't underestimate the weight it carries. When you drop this line, you do something incredibly powerful. You strip the rude person of the very thing they crave control. You remove their influence over your emotions. And more importantly, you send a very clear message. You don't matter enough to upset me. And trust me, nothing frustrates a rude person more than being ignored. Why does this line hit so hard? Picture a schoolyard bully pushing someone, waiting for retaliation, but instead of reacting, the person calmly turns and walks away completely unaffected. The bully stands there, fists clenched, words unspoken, powerless. That's exactly what happens when you use this line. You deny them the reaction. You remove their power to provoke, to manipulate, to drag you into their storm. And in that moment, they realize their words, the very tools they depend on, hold absolutely no meaning for you. It's the ultimate quiet rejection. They want you to step into the ring. They want to argue. But when you say, "This conversation was over before it even started," you don't just walk away, you elevate yourself above the pettiness entirely. Their insults become background noise. Their energy bounces off a wall of indifference. And that, more than anything, rattles them. Even better, this line protects your own energy. Because engaging with rude, bitter people is exhausting. It drains you. It pulls you into emotional quicksand. But this line? It cuts the cord instantly. It keeps your peace intact while silently reminding them they're not worth the emotional investment. Let me share a moment where I used this line and watched the shift happen in real time. A few years ago, I worked with a guy named Jake. He was the kind of coworker who always found something wrong with your work, your ideas, even the way you spoke. And worst of all, he made a point of criticizing people in front of others. It was his way of flexing control. One day, during a team meeting, I proposed a new direction for a project. Before I could even finish explaining, Jake cut in with that sarcastic grin. "Yeah, or we could just do it the right way instead." You could feel the tension ripple through the room. People stiffened. He was clearly trying to bait me, waiting for me to defend my idea, to argue, to get flustered. But I didn't flinch. I looked at him, calmly said, "This conversation was over before it even started." Then turned back to my notes and continued as if he hadn't even spoken. The silence was deafening. Jake was frozen, caught completely off guard. You could see it in his face, the surprise, the discomfort. He tried to laugh it off. But the damage was done. I hadn't given him the fight he wanted. I had dismissed him completely, without even raising my voice. And from that day on, he never pulled that trick with me again. When should you use this line? When someone is clearly trying to lure you into an argument, don't give them your time, your breath, or your energy. When a coworker, boss, or acquaintance makes passive-aggressive digs, shut it down before it escalates. When a family member or close friend crosses a line and speaks with unwarranted rudeness, you are not obligated to entertain disrespect just because you're close. When a random stranger decides to throw shade for no reason, remember, not everyone deserves a reaction. Some people just want attention. Don't give it to them. Final thought. Not every battle is worth picking up. Not every insult needs a reply. Rude people win when they steal your energy. But they lose the moment you show them they never had it in the first place. So, when you calmly say, "This conversation was over before it even started," and walk away, you don't just end the conflict, you leave them stunned, wondering how they lost control before they even realized the game had begun. Now let's step it up with something a little more playful, but just as devastating. Thanks for your input. I'll be sure to forget it immediately. This line is subtle, smooth, and cuts right through arrogance like a hot knife through butter. Rude people, at their core, crave control. They want to throw you off balance, rattle your confidence, and drag you down to their level, all while maintaining the illusion of being clever or superior. But when you use this line, you pull the rug out from under them. Let's be honest, most of the time when someone disrespects you, they're not offering any meaningful feedback. They're not engaging in thoughtful conversation. They're not trying to help. They're talking simply because they like the sound of their own voice. And more than anything, they expect you to take the bait, to absorb their words, to get defensive, to explain yourself. But instead of validating their attempt at control, You treat their words as completely disposable, forgettable, insignificant. That's what makes this comeback so powerful. You acknowledge their effort but only to dismiss it in the most casual, almost sarcastic way possible. You're not aggressive. You're not angry. You're just indifferent. And that indifference hits harder than any insult. Why does this phrase work like magic? Because it instantly renders their words worthless. Disrespectful people want their comments to live in your mind, to echo in your self-talk, to dent your self-esteem, to plant doubt. But with one calm, witty reply, you show them, you just wasted your breath. Your words are so insignificant. I won't even remember them after this moment. That realization? It lands like a punch to the ego. They expected you to argue, to get flustered, to fight back, but instead, you shrug, smile, and keep going completely unfazed. That silence that follows? That's the moment they realize they didn't just lose, they never had your attention to begin with. It protects your energy. Some people thrive on drama. They fish for reactions, waiting for you to snap or stumble. But your peace? It's worth more than their nonsense. So instead of engaging in a pointless, draining exchange, you hit them with this one-liner and move on. No emotional weight, no lingering negativity. Here's how this works in real life. Imagine you're in a team meeting at work. You suggest a new idea, thoughtful, well-reasoned, but before you can finish, a certain coworker jumps in. You know the type, always critical, never constructive. They smirk and say, "That's an interesting take, but let's leave the serious suggestions to the experts." It's a jab, a subtle power play, designed to undermine you in front of the group. But instead of getting defensive, you calmly turn to them and say, "Thanks for your input, I'll be sure to forget it immediately." Then you continue speaking, like their comment never even existed. Just like that, the dynamic shifts. Their attempt at dominance falls flat. You stay composed. They look petty. You rise. And they sink. And in personal settings, whether it's a toxic friend or a passive-aggressive relative, this line sets the boundary without creating unnecessary drama. It tells them, your negativity has no place here and no space in my mind. After you've calmly dismissed someone's negativity with a line like, "Thanks for your input, I'll be sure to forget it immediately," the message is clear. Their opinion holds no power in your world. But what happens when they keep pushing? When someone close to you or even a stranger just can't help but take another jab? That's when it's time to lean in with even more composure and even less tolerance. Imagine this. A family member makes a snide remark at a gathering. "Oh, still chasing that dream of yours? When are you finally going to get serious about life? Old, you might have defended yourself, explained, maybe even felt a sting of doubt. But not anymore. Now, you smile politely, look them in the eye, and say, 'I appreciate the comment, it's already erased from my mind.' Then you pivot the conversation. No drama, no emotion, just graceful indifference. And that's when it stings, not because you shouted, but because you didn't care. You took away their power by refusing to hold onto their words. And believe me, they'll feel it. It works just as well with strangers or trolls online. Let's say someone drops a petty insult on a public post or in a comment thread. Instead of spiraling into an argument, you casually reply, "Oh wow, you must have really thought that one would land. Thanks for the input, I'll forget it in about 3 seconds." The more relaxed and unfazed you sound, the more devastating the effect. Why? Because rude people run on a basic emotional formula. They insult right pointing arrow, you react emotionally right pointing arrow, they feel powerful. But when you break the cycle, when you answer with calm detachment, their system collapses. No emotional payout, no control, just a realization that their words mean nothing to you. And now, it's time to raise the stakes with a line that doesn't just deflect the disrespect, it flips the spotlight onto them. Here it is. You seem really dedicated to making a fool of yourself. This one's brutal and brilliant. Why? Because some people genuinely seem to live for conflict. They wake up ready to stir drama, spark arguments, and turn every interaction into a battlefield. They act as if being loud, rude, or sarcastic somehow makes them important. But this line holds up a mirror to their nonsense, and it does so without you ever raising your voice. It flips the script. They thought they were making you look foolish. But now, with just one line, you've exposed the truth. They've been doing that job all on their own. And the best part? They probably don't even realize it until now. Why does this line hit so hard? Because it cuts beneath the surface and plants a seed of doubt, even if their ego won't allow them to admit it. It forces them to pause, even briefly, and ask themselves, wait, am I actually the one embarrassing myself? Even if they brush it off, the damage is done. That awareness lingers. And what's more, you've just flipped the spotlight. You're no longer on the defensive. You've turned them into the center of attention, and not in a good way. If there are others around, they'll start noticing how ridiculous this person is acting. That's when the rude individual has only two options: backpedal awkwardly, or double down and make an even bigger fool of themselves. Either way, you win, and you do it without raising your voice or losing your cool. Because that's the real power. Staying calm while making it clear that they're the one looking foolish. Not you. How to use this in real life. Let's say you're in a meeting. A coworker, the kind who loves to be snarky, keeps interrupting, rolling their eyes, making sarcastic comments under their breath. The tension builds. Everyone notices, but no one says anything. You pause, look at them with a slight, knowing smirk, and say, "You seem really dedicated to making a fool of yourself." And then, silence. You go right back to what you were saying. No anger, no raised voice, just calm, collected authority. Once you've calmly told someone, "You seem really dedicated to making a fool of yourself," and then moved on without missing a beat, something powerful happens. You shift the dynamic entirely. You treat them like background noise. And in that moment, they're left sitting in silence, either stunned into stillness or scrambling to defend themselves, which only makes them look worse. With toxic friends or difficult family members, this approach is especially effective. Maybe you have that one friend who always finds a way to slip in a passive-aggressive jab. They say something like, "Wow, you actually did something right for once." But instead of taking the bait, you just chuckle and respond with, "You seem really dedicated to making a fool of yourself." Then you go right back to enjoying your day unfazed and unbothered. And here's the beauty of it. They sit there, slowly realizing that their little attempt to put you down completely backfired. They tried to rattle you, but instead, they exposed their own insecurity for everyone to see. This response works wonders in public too, especially with strangers or online trolls. Whether it's someone being obnoxious at a social event, or a faceless profile trying to stir chaos in the comment section. Your approach is the same. You respond. You seem really dedicated to making a fool of yourself. Keep up the hard work. Then you walk away, or close the app, or scroll past them like they don't even exist. The weight of their own words falls right back on them and they're left to carry it alone. So what makes this line psychologically powerful? Most rude or toxic people don't think they're being foolish. In their mind, they're being clever, dominant, maybe even admired. They believe they're winning the interaction. But when you call it what it truly is, foolishness, not cleverness, you shatter that illusion. You cut through the ego. And you do it without raising your voice or showing a hint of anger. That's what makes this so devastatingly effective. You don't just shut them down. You make them second-guess themselves the next time they try to act out. They'll remember how that moment felt, how they were exposed, how they looked ridiculous, and how you stayed cool through it all. And that's real power. Because at the end of the day, dealing with disrespectful people isn't about out-insulting them. It's about outclassing them. You don't need to yell. You don't need to prove anything. You don't even need to acknowledge their nonsense with real concern. Why? Because disrespect only works when you let it work. But when you stay calm, when you fire back with a line that slices through the noise, when you walk away with your peace intact while they stew in their own embarrassment, that's when the sting really sets in. That's when they realize they wasted their time trying to bring you down only to humiliate themselves instead. So next time someone crosses the line, don't react with emotion. Don't lower your energy to meet their chaos. Instead, remind yourself, you have the power to make them regret it. Not by sinking to their level, but by showing them their words hold no weight in your world. And once they see that, you've already won. At the end of the day, it's not about having the last word, it's about having the stronger presence. You don't need to shout to be powerful. You don't need to fight to prove your worth. And you definitely don't need to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Because true strength? It's quiet. It's calm. It's measured. The kind of strength that smiles at an insult and walks away not because it's weak, but because it refuses to let someone else's chaos disturb its peace. So the next time someone disrespects you, don't get angry. Get strategic. Use your words wisely. Hold your composure. And let your silence or your sharp, calm comeback speak volumes. Because once they realize you can't be shaken, they'll never try to shake you again. If this video gave you clarity, courage, or just a bit more calm in dealing with difficult people, make sure to hit that like button. Drop a comment below with your favorite line or share a story where you stood your ground. And if you want more wisdom like this delivered straight to your inbox, don't forget to join my free weekly newsletter. The link's down below. And finally, subscribe to the channel so you never miss a video that helps you grow stronger, wiser, and more unshakable in a world full of noise. Thanks for watching. Now go live with quiet power. And remember, you are in control.